So recently I was browsing around on Amazon here in Japan and I came across kind of a crazy watch by a Japanese micro brand that really caught my attention. It's an automatic dive watch that's made here in Japan. It has 200 meters of water resistance and it's only around $150. But the thing that really caught my eye was the kind of bonkers handset that they used on this. Take a look at it. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live here in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And one of my go-to places for that is just surfing around Amazon here in Japan. There's so many interesting watches that they don't have in the US. And that's been one of the fun things of moving over here to Japan, is kind of getting access to that. The Japanese market's really dominated by the major brands like Seiko, Casio, Citizen, and Orient. But there are a couple of Japanese micro brands, and they are producing watches that are built here in Japan. And some of them are pretty cool and pretty affordable. Today we're taking a look at a watch from a brand called Hyakuichi, which is Japanese for 101, which is what their brand name is. You can see it on their logo. It's 101. And I've actually kind of been aware of them for a while. They produce primarily homages. Their most popular one's a Submariner homage. But the first one that got my attention was this kind of Aquaterra inspired chronograph GMT. It's pretty rare to see a chronograph and a GMT combined, much less using sort of Aquaterra, Omega Aquaterra stylings. But then recently I saw this automatic watch that just had such a unique look to it. It has these massive contrasting hands, like so big that I almost wondered if the movement could actually hold the weight of them. But it seems to be working fine, and the watch is just so much fun to wear. But first, let's take a look at the dimensions and specifications so you can see what you're getting here. They build this watch as a 40 millimeter, but I'm measuring it closer to 41 millimeters at the bezel. It has 22 millimeter lugs, 47 millimeter lug to lug. It is 14 millimeters tall with a flat mineral crystal across the top. You are getting 200 meters of water resistance with a screw down crown, and it's powered by a Miyota automatic movement. They don't list exactly which one it is, but after looking at it, I'm pretty sure it's the Miyota 821A, which is Miyota's slightly premium 8000 series movement, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, this watch appears to be sold exclusively on Amazon. I couldn't even find a website for the company behind it. And on Amazon, this watch typically retails for around 16,000 yen, which is about 150 US dollars. But occasionally it does drop on sale. So your best bet of getting this is probably to look to one of those sites that will, ship stuff from Amazon Japan for you. You pay a little bit of extra to get them to handle that. But since I have an online shop where I sell hoodies and t-shirts, I can actually sell watches from that too. So I went ahead and picked up a couple of extra ones. So I think I have 3 of them available. So if you're watching this video when it first comes out, you can probably pick it up direct from me. If you're interested in that, it might be a little bit easier. You can just pick it up on my shop and I'll ship it over to you. And that's something I'm going to be trying to do every now and then. I'm not going to be able to keep a big inventory. So if you're interested in getting your hands on some of these affordable JDM watches like this, definitely invite you to subscribe to the channel, because that's probably going to be your best shot at it. If you're subscribed, you see the video when it first comes out, you'll get the notification that there's a couple of them available and you can pick them up. While you're there, you might as well check out the selection of hoodies and t-shirts that I got over there. All of the ones I'm selling, they're original designs that I either designed myself or had someone design for me, including this Seiko turtle design that I got. Anyways, let's get back to the watch. All right, so let's start by talking about the design of this watch, and obviously the big design feature is that handset. But I think they've gone about this pretty tastefully. The handset is really kind of in your face and dominating, but the rest of the watch is very subtle, with a lot of kind of minimalist styling cues. And I feel like that kind of gives it almost like this, postmodern pop art kind of look to it. It looks like you would see something coming out of Swatch, but instead of like a plastic quartz watch, this is a pretty solidly built dive watch with an automatic movement, and they're still keeping the price down around $150. This watch comes in a number of different colorways. I picked up both the white and black version, but I really like the white version better. Just something about the contrasting black and white hands, and then the white dial contrasting with the black bezel, I think gives it a little bit more interest and character. They made some interesting choices on the dial. The dial is very clean and very minimal. It is actually a sandwich dial design, so you're getting some very thin cutouts for the hour markers. However, both layers of the dial are white here, so there's not a lot of contrast for the hour markers. The only thing that distinguishes them is that cutout. So ironically, that kind of makes the watch a little bit difficult to read sometimes, despite having absolutely massive hands that you're never going to have a difficulty picking out. This legibility challenge is kind of amplified by the fact that this watch has a very detailed sort of second track, but it's not actually a second track. It's actually like a quarter second track. In other words, there's no large minute or second markers. So it's very difficult to actually tell what the time down to the minute on this watch. So a couple of dings to practicality, but I feel like the design and the style of it is still pretty cool and cohesive, and it sort of works together from a visual standpoint. And I think the same can be said for the bezel, which I feel like is really well designed. The bezel insert is actually two sections, so it has this sort of thin black section and then a thin silver section. And having the bezel divided that way kind of has this optical illusion of making the bezel look much thinner than it actually is, which gives the watch kind of a sleek vintage look. The black section of the bezel, I believe, is a brushed stainless steel that's been coated black. The bezel is 120 click, unidirectional, and has a very kind of soft, smooth feel to it. The clicks are not very hard or loud, but they do lock into place nicely. There's no backplay and it's well aligned. The case design is also very simple. It has kind of an elegant curve to it with sort of long, slender lugs. The lug to lug is not bad at 47 millimeters. And then you also have a signed unguarded crown. So while this watch is probably built to be like a dive watch with its 200 meters of water resistance, I feel like visually it kind of functions more as just like a very solid, kind of beefy everyday piece. The finishing on the case and bracelet and everything is completely brushed. There's no polished accents or anything like that. So very basic finishing. You do get some beveled edges across the top of the watch going along the lugs, but I think the finishing is kind of what you would expect in this sort of sub $200 price range. Build quality feels pretty solid. Everything operates very smoothly, with the exception of the clasp, which is kind of a cheap pressed clasp. It does rattle around a little bit. However, it does have 5 micro adjusts, allowing you to really fine tune the size of the bracelet. It operates pretty smoothly and locks securely into place. So it's a pretty functional clasp, but yeah, it just doesn't feel that high of quality. But the rest of the bracelet is great. You're getting solid links all the way around, including solid end links. It's a pretty decent construction there. Looking at the back of the watch, you can see a see-through exhibition case back. And that's where you can see that citizen movement inside, which again, I believe that's the Miyota 821A movement. Basically, that's Miyota's slightly premium version of, I believe, the 81000 series, 8215 maybe. So you're getting a little bit of decoration on the movement, but more importantly, this one features hacking. So a lot of the basic Miyota 8000 series movements do not, but they recently upgraded this specific one to include a hacking feature, which means that when you pull the crown out, the second hand will stop, allowing you to set the time down to the second to a reference time. Accuracy on this one has been okay. I'm getting an average of about plus 12 seconds a day, so not amazing, but you know, for a budget automatic movement like this, it's not bad. Miyota has a great reputation for their movements being very solid and reliable, very similar to the Seiko movements in that regard. The one downside, I think, to this movement compared to the Seiko NH35 is that it is a unidirectional winding movement, so that means that the rotor actually winds up spinning a lot more, and occasionally you can feel that on the wrist in some models, but on this one I didn't really notice it. Also, the Miyota 821A does feature a date function, which this watch does not make use of. The dial does not have a date cutout, so you have a ghost date position on the movement. So what that means is when you're setting it, you're going to have to pull the crown out all the way. If you leave it kind of in the middle, you'll be in this awkward place where you're setting a date that you can't really see. It's a bit of a cost-saving measure that you see pretty frequently in a lot of micro brands in this price range. Moving on to the Lume, we find one of the more disappointing aspects of this watch. Usually with sandwich dials, you'll get some pretty good Lume, but in this case, the markers are extremely weak. The hour markers fade out almost instantly, and I almost wonder like why they even bothered. However, there's 2 little Lume pips on the dial that are surprisingly bright. The Lume pip on the bezel is also pretty bright, and the hands are pretty bright. So those really outshine the rest of the watch. And the hands are the most important part. If you can see the hands, you can usually work out roughly what time it is, even without the hour markers. But I really wish they could have made the markers as bright as the pips and the handset. So overall, this is a really fun, really quirky watch. It's really unusual. That handset, again, is just unlike anything I've ever seen. And again, it really stretches the boundaries of what I even thought was kind of possible with these sort of standard entry-level movements. There's just such a cool look of seeing that massive second hand sweeping around and then easily picking out the giant minute and hour hands. Even with the hits to legibility on the dial, it's still pretty easy to read the time just because the handset is so large. And it makes this watch a really kind of interesting proposition. It's definitely not a tool watch. It's definitely more on the fashionable side of things. And yet it features an automatic movement. It has a pretty solid build quality, 200 meters of water resistance. It's made in Japan and it's really affordable. On the negative side, it's a little bit thicker than I would prefer. 14 millimeters makes it a little bit unwieldy, but it does kind of give the watch some extra wrist presence, which I think this watch has a lot of. Mineral crystals always give me a bit of a pause, but it's completely acceptable in this price range. If you wear this watch regularly, you're going to pick up some scratches on the crystal eventually. And as mentioned before, the lack of discernible minute markers and the poor lume are some other negatives of this watch. But all in all, I feel like at this price range, if you're looking for something really unique and quirky and you like this style, this is a pretty fun one to pick up. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for today. Links to the online shop down below. If you're fast, you can pick it up from me. Or again, try and track down one of those proxy buying sites that will ship direct from Japan. Let me know what you guys think of this watch in the comments down below. Always love talking to you. But that'll wrap it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.